All right, hello. I am just going to go through this little incorporating visuals in a proposal PowerPoint. If you have looked over the A3 assignment sheet, which hopefully you have, you'll notice that one of the requirements for A3 is to incorporate a visual somewhere in your proposal. So I'm going to go over kind of what that means, what I'm looking for, and things to be aware of as you're looking at how to incorporate a visual in your proposal. So to start off, you want to think about why you're including the visual that you're including in your proposal. So when you're making that choice of like what visual to put in, you should remember that visuals aren't just there for like a professional look, right? We want to think about like what is the purpose of this visual? Is it helping you to explain your information? Does it seem like it would be genuinely helpful for the audience to have that visual? And with that, I also want to really emphasize that not only am I looking for a visual in this proposal, I want to see you engaging with the visual in the text of your proposal. So what I mean by that is I don't want to see just a table that has information in it, and then you never address the fact that there's a table in your proposal, right? So I want you to, if you're gonna like have a table in your proposal, for example, I want to see you kind of like in the actual like text, like in the proposal that you are writing. I want to see you bring it up and like talk about why it relates to your proposal, right? So you should explain your visual in your actual writing as well. And also, when you're choosing an image for your visual, you want to think about like you don't want it to just be there because like, oh, this visual was like in an article that I read for this proposal, so I'll just copy and paste it here, right? You want to make sure that the visual is doing productive work to help clarify any information that could be confusing. So for example, if you want to show, if you want to like maybe compare like uh, data for like nuclear energy versus data for renewable energy, for example. Um, and if some of those numbers are confusing, like if you want to like use specific numbers and they're confusing to your audience, a visual might really help you explain some of the evidence that you have there. So the goal is to make the information as easy to understand as possible for your audience. And illustrations are also something that you can use, or images. So it doesn't just have to be graphs or charts or tables. You could perhaps use an image or an illustration to help show your audience kind of what your vision is. And I'll talk a little bit more later on in this PowerPoint about some examples for illustrations. But essentially, the best way to choose what visual you want to include is think about when you were doing research, when you were looking through these articles, which visuals, which images were most helpful for you, which helped you understand the data better. And then if it was helpful to you, there's a really good chance that whoever your chosen audience is, it will be helpful for them as well. All right, so next I'm going to just go through some different examples of types of visuals that you can include. So the first one is tables. So tables are best for comparing individual values for data. Oftentimes tables are great for if there's multiple units of measurement or categories. So right, for example, in this table we have like the year, and then we also have like the amounts of these different things, right? These are different values. So a table is a really good way to demonstrate that information. By the way, I often get asked for this assignment if you should be creating the table or the visual yourself. You don't have to. You can use a visual that was used in another source. You just have to make sure that you're citing it properly. And again, you have to make sure that you are addressing the visual in the actual writing of your proposal. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. But I'm not expecting, you can if you want. If you want to create your own table, you are more than welcome to. But I'm not requiring you to like create a visual from scratch. But anyway, back to tables. So if you're looking to help explain specific values, and if like those specific numbers are going to be important to your reader, then maybe a table is a good call. And in terms of titling, you'll refer to your table as just table 1. If you have multiple, you would do table 1, table 2. This is a pretty short proposal, so I'm expecting you to have basically just 1, maybe 2 images. But yeah, you would call it table 1 or table 2 if you have multiple. And you're going to put that above the actual table along with a title. So the title for this example is very long. It's Degrees in Modern Foreign Language, blah, 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 right? So table 1, and then whatever the title of your table is what you're going to want to include. And then that's going to be left aligned. And then you also want to include the source, so you would just say source with a colon, and then you'll put in your citation. And I'll go into how to cite images at the end of this PowerPoint, probably in a second video. But if you are looking for specific guidelines, OWL Purdue is a great source for looking at how to create a citation for an image. But you'll put that below the table if you include a source or a description. That's also an option. So you can see in this example, this person kind of did an indent. And this A right here is kind of a footnote, because there's a little signal here that says that. You can format it that way if you want. I'm not really like super concerned with like the specific formatting of like any description you may want to include under here. Just make sure that it's consistent if you're using multiple images. And also, if you're including a description for your visual, I still want you to mention in like your actual proposal, like in one of your subcategories, I want you to still mention the table and interact with the table. So even if you have a description, you should still be talking about the table in the rest of your proposal at some point, or whatever visual you choose. You don't have to choose a table. And then finally, just make sure that you are double spacing everything. All right, so for charts, graphs, and illustrations, it's another type of visual that you could include. So graphs and charts are usually good for kind of like big picture information. If you want to take some data or some numbers, and if the individual values aren't as important, if it's more like general trends or something like that, like sweeping overall information, that's a really great opportunity to use a graph or a chart. And you can also use an illustration. Be very interesting to read a proposal that had this illustration. But you could use like an image, for example, as I mentioned before, to help your reader kind of see what your vision is. So a really good example of this within the context of a proposal would be the visuals that the author of the Skate Park Under Bridges proposal uses. So in that proposal, the author includes like pictures of like what the skate park could look like as kind of an example. So that's a way that you could use your visual as well. But make sure that, right, with a proposal that's a specific genre, as we've discussed, and the purpose of your proposal is to like claim a solution, right? You're claiming that you have a solution to this issue that you've brought up, right? So you want to make sure that whatever visual you use, it's strongly connected there. Even if you use an illustration, you want to make sure that the connection is very clear, and it's not just there for the aesthetic, right? I once had a student ask me if they could make a pathos appeal in their proposal by having an image of a child crying. That isn't like very directly connected to the proposed solution, right? Or the issue. So I would, if you're considering like those types of images that are like not super related, yeah, come talk to me. We can brainstorm ideas. All right, so for labeling, graphs, charts, and illustrations are going to be labeled no matter which one it is. You're going to label it as a figure. So figure 1, figure 2. You can abbreviate that as FIG, fig. And then you need to, again, just like with tables, you're going to number it. And then just a caption. You can include your citation there that has all of the publication information. You can describe what the image is. That's, in general, the genre convention for citing a chart, graph, or image. All right, so in terms of placement, like where you will put your visual, you want to make sure it's as close as possible to the part of your proposal where you're talking about whatever the visual is, right? So you don't want it to be like, oh, as you can see from the table, like 2 pages up, blah, 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 right? You like don't want your reader to have to like scroll all the way back up and like look at the image and then scroll all the way back down and read what you have to say about it. You want them to be pretty close together. And I'll reference the reading that I had you do. We should remember that visuals need to supplement, not replace your writing. So again, as I've been saying throughout this video, make sure that you're explaining your visuals. Yeah, you don't want to just like have it in there, which I do see pretty often, which is why I'm repeating this so much, is I see a lot of A3s where students will include an image and they're kind of thinking like, oh, well, this table speaks for itself. I don't need to really explain it. Or I'll just vaguely mention data and like that will be an explanation for this table. I want you to explain to your audience why that table is there and why they should look at it, right? So the best way to kind of incorporate a visual into the text from a technical perspective is to just do wrap text. If you don't know how to do that, you can just Google how to use wrap text in Word. I'm pretty sure you just right-click the image and it is an option once you have it in your Word doc. You also want to think about size, right? You don't want a table that's so big it takes up an entire page, because that's kind of awkward. And you don't want like a visual that has like a lot of important information. If it's so small that your audience can't read it, or if it's cut off somehow, that like goes against the genre convention. All right, so I will make a second video about other design considerations, and in that second video, I'll also talk about how to cite a visual, so stay tuned for that.